Good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. And we've got to get right to it, because do we have a show in store for you? Coming up in just a moment, after I go through breaking news and read some of your comments, we're going to hear from James Kuhl. He's a part of our series of those running in the primary coming up on Tuesday for Steuben County legislator in the district encompassing Irwin. So that's coming up in about a minute. Then, after James Kuhl, we're going to be talking with Congressman Nick Langworthy in studio. Full disclosure, we recorded this yesterday. So for those of you that spend much of your weeks protesting, no sense coming down here. It has already been recorded, but Nick Langworthy will be our guest in this hour. Then in the 7 o'clock hour, none other than former Congressman, current Assemblyman, Joe Sempolinski, live in studio. What a show. What did I tell you? You've always got to tune in. Then Monday, wrapping up our Irwin series for those running for Steuben County Legislature, Drenald Bakari. He'll be joining us on Monday. Never know what you're going to get on this program. That's why I have to tune in every morning. Okay, Trump can keep control of the National Guard troops that are deployed to Los Angeles, according to appeals court rule. An appeals court allowed President Trump to keep control of the National Guard troops he deployed in Los Angeles following the protests over immigration raids. The decision halts a ruling from a lower court judge who found Trump acted illegally when he activated the soldiers over opposition from Governor Newsom. The deployment was the first by a president of a state National Guard without the governor's permission since 1965. In its decision, the court concluded that it's likely the president lawfully exercised his statutory authority in federalizing control of the Guard. It said that while presidents don't have unfettered power to seize control of state guards, the Trump administration had presented enough evidence to show it had a defense rationale for doing so, citing violent acts by protesters, saying, quote, "The undisputed facts demonstrate that before the deployment of the National Guard, protesters pinned down several federal officers and threw concrete chunks, bottles of liquid, and other objects at the officers. Protesters also damaged federal buildings and caused the closure of at least one federal building. And a federal van was attacked by protesters who smashed in the van's windows," the court wrote. And the federal government's interest in preventing incidents like these is significant. Trump celebrating the decision on Truth Social, calling it a big win. He wrote that all over the United States, in our cities and our people need protection. We are the ones to give it to them should state and local police be unable, for whatever reason, to get the job done. Now, Gavin Newsom, he relayed a message saying the court rightly rejected Trump's claim that he can do whatever he wants with the National Guard and not have to explain himself in court. The president is not a king and is not above the law. We will press forward with our challenge to President Trump's authoritarian use of U.S. military soldiers against citizens. Now, Newsom, of course, focusing on 2028 and maybe making back some of the ground he lost during the wildfires and during the handling of these riots. So he's using terms like authoritarian. And, well, you know the role that the Democrats are taking. I don't think we're going to have a chance to get to it, but we might talk about it with Joe Sempolinski about the kind of chaos of the Democrat Party right now, the lack of money, lack of a message. Mark writes in, because this is the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of our program where we read viewer comments. Mark writes in, "Good morning, Frank." Well, good morning, Mark. "It's the first day of summer, it sure is, and triple 90s are coming, I know. I see Trump announce that there are too many holidays during Juneteenth. Not a great move. And the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders get a 400% raise." Well, that's an interesting mix, Mark. I appreciate the sentiment. Appreciate the news of the day. Comment. We'll get to comments here in just a little bit. I don't like to read as I go live. As I said, we have a guest coming up in just a moment because we are running busy. But a Jewish GOP congressman says he was run off the road by a deranged man with a Palestinian flag, calling it a blatant anti-Semitic violence. Max Miller from Ohio, Representative Max Miller, said this morning, as I was driving to work, some unhinged, deranged man decided to lay on his horn and run me off the road when he couldn't get my attention to show me a Palestinian flag. Not to mention death to Israel, death to me, that he wanted to kill me and my family, the congressman continued. Thank God my daughter was not in my vehicle or anyone else at that time. We've talked about the normalization of far-left violence on this program, and the rise in anti-Semitism, with even Van Jones saying that the Democrat Party has been marbled with anti-Semitism. In New York State Regents exams have made many, specifically in Long Island, upset with their definition of Zionism. There's a controversy on Long Island over a New York State Regents exam study packet that some say inaccurately defines Zionism and includes factual errors. It defines Zionism as an example of extreme nationalism. Now, to call Zionism extreme nationalism is propaganda. I consider myself a Zionist, said Michelle Herman. There's nothing extreme about Zionism. It is loving my country. The review included historical inaccuracies and bias, including statements like every war ended with Israel gaining more land and Jews taking land away from Palestinians. It's incorrect, it's propaganda, it's biased. That coming from the New York State Regents. All right, then you wonder where this all begins. You wonder how the anti-Semitism has run amok on college campuses. We do have to take a break already because we have to get right to it. Coming up next, James Kuhl running for re-election to Steuben County Legislature in the district that encompasses Irwin. We'll hear from him. We heard from his opponent yesterday, Kristen Clemens Westervelt, and we'll hear from his other opponent, Jornold Bakari, who will be on the program on Monday. Coming up after James, we're going to hear from Congressman Nick Langworthy. Then after that, former Congressman Joe Sempolinski, current Assemblyman. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and this is our Steuben County Office for the Aging section of our program. Steuben County Office for the Aging, committed to maximizing quality of life, safety, and independence. And we are in the Hesselson studio, and in that studio, James Kuhl returns. Welcome back.
Good morning, Frank. How are you?
Good, I'm doing great. Let's start with a disclaimer. I do live in the town of Irwin. I'm on Irwin Town Board. I serve with you. So I'm trying to keep these questions for all three candidates as similar as possible. But yours changed last time, and it's going to change again this time because I ask only the tough questions. You know that. That's I've got the reputation for that. How did the Little League team do?
Well, it was a huge success.
Okay, good.
And I'll tell you why. It's because we had two kids on the team that by the end of the last game got their first hits.
Oh, and congratulations.
Boy, that kind of joy, it just makes you want to keep coming back and doing it.
Can't be matched.
We also happened to win a few games, so that was great too.
Good, so that's bonus.
Yeah, exactly.
Bonus at that point.
Bonus.
All right, but on the serious note, yes, of course. I wanted to see how the team went. Okay, so tell us about your background for those of us that don't know.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm originally from Hammondsport. I moved to Irwin around 10 years ago, roughly. My wife and I, we're raising three boys who are all at home right now, out of school. But we chose Irwin here because as we started to look at places that we thought were great for raising a family, Irwin was the spot.
Oh, absolutely.
And so we live there. I work for a business software company that's based out of Horseheads. Okay. So I do data analysis. I'm a consultant. I work with clients to really help use data to help them perform better in their various sectors. Mm-hmm. And for when I moved in, I immediately volunteered. Yeah. And mm-hmm. the town very well.
Yes,
so they always find a place for warm bodies.
Yeah, they sure do.
And so I was able to join the planning board for 3 years there, mm-hmm. and then about 4 years ago, roughly 4 years ago was when a town board opening mm-hmm. and the county legislature spot opened up, and I ran ran then, and have been serving at the county and at the town level for the past 4 years.
And now you're obviously the incumbent, so it's a little weird to ask you this question,
Sure.
but why are you running again? For still kind of like, I ask everybody why you decided to run, and why are you running for re-election?
So there's plenty of work left to do. That's the thing, is that I'm happy with how things went for the past 4 years, was able to accomplish some good things for Irwin, for the county. And so that's really why I'm motivated to say there's still problems. There's still things to address. I know we're going to get into it, but in the campaign, you get to go around and talk to people, and knock on their doors, and you really start to hear more and more about certain issues that are negatively impacting their lives.
Of course.
And so it's, how do we take those insights, take them back to the county, take them to the town, and say, let's figure out a way to either address this, who do we need to bring in, how do we start to help solve and relieve the burden that is on our residents.
Now, and I can jump ahead because that's a great segue into that. But no, you're fine. Everybody knows my questions now. I'm getting old hat. But when you talk to voters and they have the concerns, I'm sure it could be a little different than maybe what you deal with behind the scenes, what your concern is as a legislator. So let's start there. What are the voters' concerns?
Affordability. 100%.
Yeah.
That's every time I walk up to someone's driveway, knock on their door, say, what's going on with your life? What keeps you up at night? And it's costs. It's affordability. It's how do you expect to continue to have various taxes and cost rise, and whether it's salaries or if they're, we have a number of residents that are seniors that are on fixed income. They're getting squeezed.
They are.
And so it's how do we, at the county level, how do we control the costs that we can control? How do we cut costs where we can? How do we find efficiencies and optimize the programs and services that are being offered? If they're not being utilized, do they still necessitate investment? It's starting there, and that's what I hear every time. And I've been going out every day and knocking on doors, and that's what I do here when I'm out there.
Well, behind the scenes, what do you think are some major issues that we're dealing with in Steuben County?
Homelessness would be one that is, and I say that for a couple of reasons, right? On a social services side, it's a huge draw of our people at the county, our resources at the county. It also can have quality of life implications, right down near the Addison town line, where we do house some homeless here in Irwin. There have been criminal activities that are being perpetrated on the neighbors to the places that we're housing. The numbers aren't going down; they're going one direction. And what we have to do is start to figure out what are some of the, and this is not just a local, this is a state, this is a national issue, and no one person has the answer, but how do we here start to address it in the way that we can at Steuben County? Because it's impacting Hornell, it's impacting Bath, it's impacting Corning, it's impacting Painted Post. There's big dollars behind it too. So we're already at year to date, as of April, we had $2 million that we've spent at the county to house roughly 800 homeless persons in the county, not just here in Painted Post or Irwin, but all across the county. So that's one of the things where you're talking about dollars that are required to be spent, people hours of addressing some of the concerns that the homeless have, whether it's helping them get jobs, getting placements, helping them, medical attention, any of those sorts of things. But then you're talking about how else does it impact those surrounding the areas that we are housing in. So that would be one. It's a really big issue because it's on every level, but it doesn't get as much attention unless you happen to be living right nearby where they are being housed.
I was going to say, when I first got on the town board, a lot of times constituents don't reach out. Sometimes they do. That was the biggest concern I got right out of the gate, people contacting, because it does affect, there's so many, like you said, different levels of how it affects people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a multi-pronged problem, and there won't be a simple solution. That's the other thing, is that it's not going away. So it's how do you start to come up with a strategy of maybe attack it here a little bit, attack it there. That way you can start to start to help alleviate the burden it places on everybody.
I agree. Now, there's a couple big issues that what comes up with the county. And number one, we talked about it last time, flooding. And since the last time you were on the program, oh my goodness, I saw we had people sending, especially up by Cuca, sending me photos. Oh my gosh, there's rivers driving through. So what is the county doing to, I mean, you can't stop flooding, I suppose, but to better mitigate the problem?
So I think this is where it comes with partnerships, right? I mean, we at the county, we don't operate in isolation. Right. We rely on state partners. We rely on federal partners to be able to help kind of attack these types of problems. And we have great people in place, not only here at the county with soil and water, but with public works. But we're also talking about in the assembly, right? With Bill and Joe Sempolinski, and then you've got Tom O'Mara, doing a great job. Big champions, and obviously for these types of issues. Now, I was in Hammondsport yesterday morning and we had a small business roundtable. So we've started this series of bringing small business owners together to try to understand what kind of challenges they're facing, and what came up was around flooding. Around how do we work with the county and soil and water to alleviate, because we're talking about also, it's not just a barbershop. We're talking about farms. We're talking about crops that have very big economic impacts for our area. So
great point.
It again, multi-pronged, but it's a huge issue that we need to keep working with those that have the resources and try to help advocate and say, you can't forget about us here in Steuben County. We deserve to have investment here. We deserve to have those assets deployed here, and this is where together we can start to really kind of fix this problem. Driving here right now, I mean, the river is brown and it is high, right? And you can see those trees that are just flowing right on through. So it's a problem that's not going to go away anytime soon. So we do really need to continue to look at it.
The next other issue, we talked about it last time as well, but just to get your opinion on it, the county and the identification issue with the sheriff.
Yeah, sure. So I think I said last time, right? This is really, in my view, around eliminating liability risk because of the way that we what I said at the beginning around affordability. As taxpayers here, we can't afford, we're taxed so high that we can't afford additional costs that come down. And so that, I think, one of the issues there is really around trying to eliminate the risk of any huge, big number litigations that come through the county being passed down onto our taxpayers.
Now let's talk about some of the fun stuff. How's the campaign going?
Campaign's going great. We're having a lot of fun, and that's the thing. So
you guys got the I was talking off the air. You got the worst weather though. It feels like it's primary season. Not today. But
well, exactly. I mean, you don't have to wear the big puffy coats.
Petition,
right now.
I meant. Yeah, I'm not you can tell where my head's at. Yeah.
But absolutely. I mean, the rain always keeps people from opening their doors at the same time. It doesn't stop me from going out and knocking on doors. And that's really the importance.
That's what it's about.
Is getting out and saying, listen, here is what's important to me. I would like to learn what's important to you and see if we can't figure out how to work together to keep moving Irwin and Painted Post forward. And that's what's great about it is that, we've had a couple of campaign events, right? Yep. I've been going to Jelly Beans and sitting there and having coffees with.
Oh, that's
with
hardly
folks.
Work.
Well,
I get a big breakfast and I count that as work.
They do such a good breakfast
they do.
Too. And it's big. That's what you always gotta love about it. But it's been a lot of fun. And
how was Colonial Days?
Colonial Days was excellent. Excellent.
I'm glad they're bringing it back.
It was even better than last year, right? I don't know if did you get a chance to go over?
I didn't this year.
So
last year I got
had the pageant, Miss Colonial Days pageant.
I went to that because my friend that I used to work with was the ringleader of it, Elisa.
Okay, yes,
so they had a great turnout for that.
Yeah, exactly. And then they had the Rock the Block the next night, which they had a great turnout because they've moved it from the parking lot into the gazebo, which is a good venue for it. And then great turnout. The rain held off, thankfully, on Saturday for the parade. But even more people than there was last year.
That's
I know
great.
they're talking with Painted Posts, Parks and Art. They are just trying to build it back, just trying to get it there.
That's good.
And then they had the marching band competition right after the parade and the chicken barbecue.
Oh yeah.
So they did an excellent job, and so Colonial Days is fun.
I'm glad they're bringing it back. We were here at the station. We were at the cardboard boat regatta.
Oh, you went to the regatta, yeah.
So
okay.
because we
so,
film it, so
that's a
I
draw
missed it.
too.
Yeah, I know. But I think
that water must.
I'm glad that. Oh my gosh, can you imagine how cold it was? It was. And speaking of all the debris and everything in there, because at that point the boats weren't allowed. I don't think on the lake.
Was the temporary kind of restriction was on?
Yeah. So what is your less than a week? Oh my gosh, Tuesday is primary day. What does that look like from now till Tuesday for you?
So continuing to get out, try to hit as many doors as possible. Mm-hmm. That's really what's important to me is getting out and hearing directly from voters, and not just voters, residents, anybody. And that's just it. And so we've got only a couple days left. It seems like it flew by.
Oh my gosh.
And so I just say a quick thank you to my supporters so far. They've been great getting yard signs out. If anybody wants a yard sign for 4 days, happy to just hit the website jameskuhlforirwin.com and we'll get one to you right away.
You keep jumping ahead on my questions. How can people help and find out more?
I'm just trying to make it a little easier.
I know.
We'll keep
breeze through this
seamless.
Yeah.
So I am on Facebook. At James Kuhl for Irwin is my Facebook page, but also jameskuhlforirwin.com. But at the same time, you can find my cell phone and email that are on the county website. Mm-hmm. I am absolutely open to what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's please reach out.
There's no excuse,
if there is something you would like to talk about.
All right.
Forward.
The big question: what do you say to voters before they head to the booth on Tuesday?
Right. So I think this is where I've sitting in the position that I've been in for the last 4 years. I've really learned what it takes to be effective, and it's not just showing up and saying yay or nay. Right. You really have to take an active approach, and you have to be active in the community. Mm-hmm. So, for example, this is just one good example because I recently reached out and met with Congresswoman Claudia Tenney's office to fight for what was something that was potentially going to be eliminated out of that tax reconciliation bill, which is what's called the Social Security block grant funds. It's only $1.2 billion, but that's nationwide. Mm-hmm. But what's important is that we get a small sliver of that money, and what the Department of Social Services uses that money for here in Steuben County is to keep kids from having to go into the foster system.
Oh, wow.
And then if they're foster kids, it's helping them place them.
Okay.
So even this small amount of money has immense direct impact on families here in Irwin, in the county. Mm-hmm. And so it's that kind of thing where you have to go the extra mile.
Be proactive.
And that's how you're going to help make Irwin, in my view, a better place to live and a better place to raise a family. And so that's what I would hope people would keep in mind, is that what you want is someone that's a strong fighting voice for you, and to be effective to help us out in what I hope is a vibrant and prosperous community.
Right.
So,
well, James Kuhl's been our guest. Thanks so much for being on the program. Best of luck on Tuesday.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate
it.
We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to James Kuhl for being on the program this morning. He's running for Steuben County Legislature in the district encompassing Irwin. His opponent, Kristen Clemens Westervelt, was on yesterday's program, and will round off Irwin days, if you will, with Drenald Bakari, running for Steuben County Legislator in the district that encompasses Irwin. Coming up in just a moment, we have an interview with Congressman Nick Langworthy in studio. In full disclosure, we pre-recorded it yesterday. Had a nice conversation. I think it's very important that you hear what he has to say. So that's coming up in a moment. Let's read your comments before we take a break. This is the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of our program. Steuben Senior Services Fund, empowering seniors to age at home. First comment: the National Guard was called out in 1965 because Democrats were stopping Martin Luther King's march in Selma, Alabama. Thank you. Comment from a different viewer: June 19th, 1775, George Washington took command of the Continental Army, the first commander of the Army. Thank you very much. Yesterday in history. Thank you very much for that. Don't forget, after we talk with Nick Langworthy, we're going to be talking with former Congressman Joe Sempolinski. I know, fan favorite. You can get your questions. He's coming in live to the studio here in just a little bit. First, we didn't mention this at the top of the show. Trump is going to make his final decision within the next 2 weeks on the U.S. taking military action against Iran, based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiation that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future. I will make a decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks, he told reporters. Now, the media is trying to present it as Trump's base, the MAGA faithful, are in an uproar over his openness to joining the Iran fight. That was the New York Times just on Wednesday. But according to a new poll by J&L Partners, it shows MAGA Republicans overwhelmingly support a U.S. strike on Iran, indeed by more than 3-1. Just 19% oppose the move. In real life, folks from Trump's base are sticking with him and are far from the isolationists the Times pretend. So there we are. Oh, by the way, Benjamin Netanyahu suggesting that Israel can strike Iran's Fordo nuclear site, believing it to be buried deep under a mountain, even without U.S. help. Netanyahu insisted the Jewish state will achieve all our objectives, despite many military experts doubting that the Jewish state has the capability of taking out the underground nuclear facility. Netanyahu saying, we will achieve all our objectives and hit all their nuclear facilities. We have the capability to do that. All right, on that note, we got to take a break because we've got the Congressman Nick Langworthy coming up next. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting from the Hesselson Studio, and this is the Steuben County Office for the Aging section of our program. Joining us in the Hesselson Studio, Congressman Nick Langworthy. Thanks so much for being here.
It's great to be back with you, Frank.
You have so much going on. Washington has so much going on. But first, let's talk, because we talk about energy, being New York State residents. Everybody's talking about energy. Tell us about the Energy Choice Act.
Well, this is a bill I'm really proud of. I mean, this is one of the main reasons I ran for Congress, was to go take this fight to the halls of Congress. We have a situation now where New York State and California are trying to mandate their whims on the entire country. What the Energy Choice does, the Energy Choice Act does, is ban the bans.
I love that.
So we no longer allow state or local governments to limit the choice of a consumer as to how to heat or power their home. If you want to solar power your house, if you want the whole thing to be solar, I support that.
Yeah.
If you want to build a giant windmill in your yard and that's within the local laws,
Sure.
I support that. The state has vilified natural gas, and we've seen it nowhere more than in the southern tier, where they robbed us of transformational opportunity to harness and really frack the natural gas that God gave us. It could have transformed our economy just like it's done for Pennsylvania and Ohio. We've been left behind in the fracking revolution that has really made American energy exploration all the more possible. I just went out to visit fracking sites in West Texas. It's incredible.
It's amazing
what they're doing. And I remember in those Obama years, they were talking about us running out of oil.
Yeah.
Now, there will be no shortage of oil for hundreds and hundreds of years because of this technology, and it's done in a very sound environmental way. But we're going to this law, if we can get this to the president's desk, would prevent states from limiting that choice. And Albany's trying to do it through 1,000 paper cuts. We saw another hit this week with, one of their new ridiculous laws about the last 100 feet of a pipeline that can cost a homeowner $25,000 if they want to build a house and connect to natural gas. Natural gas is clean, it's effective, it's predictable, it's there in times of great crisis when the electrical grid's out.
And that's a great point. I know you talked about it in the past. This can literally lead to deaths in our rural area. If we lose power, and you know how it is in our area, we can lose power for a week sometimes. What if that's how you're heating your home in the winter?
Hey, we had, I'll never forget the blizzard at Christmas of 22. I was literally days away from being sworn into Congress. I had a newborn baby in our house.
Right.
And it was the worst blizzard I've ever lived through. 69 people lost their lives in that storm. And I looked the governor in the eye one time when she came to speak to the delegation, and I said, if your electrification mandates were online during that blizzard that affected both of our hometowns, it would have been 600 dead, not 69.
Easily.
Between EV mandates and the full electrification, people were without power for a long time, and the winds were such that the power workers couldn't get up to fix them, and it was a very helpless feeling. But we always knew we had our natural gas working.
Always
people,
there.
Turned on their ranges in their kitchens if they didn't have natural gas heating their home. They had found creative ways to create heat, and natural gas was always there.
Yeah, always dependable. And another thing that I think is overlooked, I know Assemblyman Phil Palmisano talks about a lot. The grid is just not there for what she's proposing.
It's definitely not there. I've met with officials with the various power utilities. I mean, they tell me that the grid in upstate New York is akin to a third world country. Something you'd see in Central America.
There you go.
And it's because they've neglected it, and they haven't invested in it. They've taken the money and diverted it elsewhere instead of taking care of it and making it world class. All these rate increases that our taxpayers are seeing right now are supposed to help improve that grid. That grid needs to be severely improved. We need to get more energy onto it.
Right.
They have all these high hopes for what the electrical demand, whether it's electric school buses, electric cars, electric heating. They have no way to get it. I mean, Democrats, if you ask them typically, where does energy come from, they say the wall.
Right, no.
But we have to produce that electricity. We're very blessed in the state to have Niagara Falls and a hydropower infrastructure, which is about 20% of our total output. But over 40% of the state's electricity is through creating and burning natural gas. Right. It is not something to be vilified. We need to celebrate it. We should be taking all the shuttered coal, the former coal electric plants, and repurposing those with natural gas so we have more energy available, not less.
It wasn't interesting to see the Democrats turn on Tesla because of Elon Musk.
In an instant.
Yeah, so
in
quickly.
An instant. It was so cool to have a Tesla at one point. Then they were burning them.
Yeah.
And it's just, this green energy movement, I'm all for all of the above strategy.
Of course.
When I was in West Texas, I saw a lot of windmills and solar panels around Griggs. Right. Because there's no lines bringing that power out to this very remote part of Texas. They need those renewables to help power the rigs in the intense energy demand of harnessing our natural gas and oil. It's got to all work together. The government shouldn't be picking winners and losers. The market's got to be involved, and consumer choice has to be at the forefront of this.
What does it look like with Energy Choice Act? You're saying bipartisan support?
We have bipartisan support right away. Senator Justice of West Virginia has introduced a companion bill in the Senate.
Oh, great.
So we're excited. We feel we got real momentum. I'm now on the Energy and Commerce Committee. Great. I'm the only New Yorker on that committee, the only one from north of Pennsylvania on that committee. So I look at my role on that committee is to take this fight to these Green New Deal policies that are stifling not just our state but our country. I mean, Hochul's unwillingness to allow pipelines to be created in New York is killing off our opportunity to win the AI war.
Right.
We have to have American energy going throughout the northeastern United States. And I'm going to use this platform any way I can to help that agenda.
Well, I know a lot of viewers right now are saying amen, because the comments that I received when those first energy bills came with the increases, it's heartbreaking. Some of these people thinking about moving out of their house because they can't afford it because of your electric bill.
And the rates have gone up, but that's without mandated more usage.
I know.
Imagine what your electric bill would be if you had to heat the home.
Yeah.
All your electricity to heat the water in your home.
And retrofitting.
And retrofitting. But you're looking, if someone's on a geothermal heat pump, you're looking at a $1,500 a month electric bill. It's not sustainable. There's people that their mortgage payment's not that much.
No, of course not. Wow. Speaking of Governor Hochul, let's stick on that point for a moment. What an outstanding job you did, and we heard from so many viewers, grilling Governor Hochul recently. How did that feel?
Well, it was great to have.
We all wish we were there for a moment.
It was great to host the governor at the Oversight Committee. I don't think she enjoyed it as much as some of us did, but it was the opportunity where she had to sit there and take an oath and give answers or non-answers.
Right.
But you know what? She heard the questions. And I think a lot, from the feedback I've received from our district and from people across the state, they were appreciative that we brought her policies to light. I used my opportunity to talk about New York's green light law. And I've met with Tom Homan. I've met with, officials in ICE Buffalo, which has a jurisdiction of all of upstate New York and in the counties north of New York City. The biggest impediment to them doing their jobs is New York State's green light law. We readily share this data and information with Canada, but we won't share it as a matter of law with our federal law enforcement officers. So when an ICE agent or customs agent or a Homeland Security law enforcement officer pulls someone over, they're taking their matters in their own hands. They don't have any data. They don't know who they're pulling over. They don't know what name is associated with that car because it's got a New York tag on it. And we saw it just down the road in Endicott. They had a Peruvian serial killer that killed 23 people, hiding in plain sight right in Endicott. It took extra months for Buffalo ICE to hunt that guy down, that monster that had no business being in our country because of New York State's green light law.
And just in general at the hearing, wasn't it really telling when Governor Hochul was called out on all of these specific instances and she said, well, there's a lot of cases, basically saying I can't know them all. Well, isn't that a red flag?
She didn't know one of them.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, and I can't say I'm an expert on all of the names, but if I was the governor of the state, I'd know the person that perpetrated that horrific killing on the subway where someone was burned alive. I mean, these are days-long stories.
National stories.
It was a national story. It was on the front page of every paper in New York, and she was just so flippant and disengaged. I think that's the biggest takeaway I have is just how disengaged the governor was, acting as if we weren't asking valid questions.
Right.
I mean, those weren't Republican or Democratic questions. Those were law and order questions.
Yes.
Those were that was the will of my constituents. And her insistence on doubling down on sanctuary city and state policies, and now you see even in the wake of her coming to Washington and leaving with her tail between her legs after a days long hearing, she announces $50 million of your money being spent to defend those that have come into the country illegally in a court of law. I mean, whose side are you on, Governor? Whose side are you on? Are you with the law-abiding taxpayer or the people that are here breaking the law? It's a pretty simple equation.
Don't you think she would have learned after how well Lee Zeldin did that public safety does matter to the residents of New York? She
knows that she can stay governor because of the mathematics of the voter registration in the state, never giving a damn about Steuben or Chemung or Schuyler counties, that she can just go and play to her New York City Democratic base and the extremes that vote in primaries. It's always the most liberal or the most conservative people that vote in the party primaries. As long as she keeps their support, she thinks she's going to win. That's why it's so important for us to up the ante here. Get organized, get active, more than we ever have before.
Couldn't agree more.
Because we have to fight for this state. It's our home. It's worth fighting for. And our way of life in upstate New York has never been this under assault.
I couldn't agree more. Now we've got to talk what we've all been waiting for, the big, beautiful bill. How perfect is that name?
It's a Trump branding exercise for sure.
Yes. So tell us, where's it at? What's it look like right now?
Well, right now the Senate is finalizing each of their departments, just like we went through that whole exercise. I don't know what will ultimately get to the floor or not. They have to mark it up still. They have to go through the process. All we have is initial bill drafting. There's some things in there that, I'm concerned about on things that my Energy and Commerce Committee avoided on the Medicaid discussion, things that would impact our rural hospitals that I would hope they could ultimately get out of that bill. But the Senate's got to go through their process. Things will change hour by hour. It's a matter of being able to get enough support behind the final bill for passage. But this is extending the current tax code, which will lead to growth in this country like we haven't seen before. Some estimate there's $4 trillion of private equity sitting on the sidelines just waiting to see what the tax situation is in this country because they're afraid it's all going to revert back to the Obama rates. And that will make us less competitive across the globe. We have to protect the programs that are there for our most vulnerable. I'm very proud that in the House bill that we put a common sense work requirement on Medicaid.
Yes.
So people that are able-bodied and are of working age, that don't have dependent children, have to actually go work for it like everybody else.
Wouldn't it be nice if the media represented it that way and not just try to scare people?
Every interview I've done, Frank, is just him telling me how could I callously throw people out in the street. It's like in the Congressional Budget Office is so dishonest. I mean, they say 4.5 million people are going to lose their coverage. It's like, but the great thing is the choice is theirs. They can keep the coverage. All they have to do is try to work.
Volunteer even.
They can volunteer. They can go to school.
Yeah.
They can get some sort of job training. They can do all of those things and still maintain the coverage. 20 hours a week, 80 hours a month. Try.
Yeah.
We're just asking you to get in the game. Every business I visit is hiring.
I know.
Jobs are plentiful. When I was on the factory floors a few weeks ago, the last recess we had, and talked about no tax on overtimes, seeing those heads nod up and down, people thinking, finally the government is going to do something for me and help me put more money in my pocket. But then when I tell them about the work requirement on Medicaid, those same heads nod.
Exactly.
Because I said, you work hard for your benefits to provide for your family. Everyone else that's able to should too.
And you mentioned people are hiring everywhere. I'm on the Salvation Army board. We'll let you volunteer any day if that's the low bar. So there's people that want you to volunteer. There's people that want you to work. It's a pretty low bar. And when people are presented with it that way, they support it wholeheartedly.
It's really a common sense approach. And, the best argument I think I make on this one is the fact that this is just harkening back to Bill Clinton's policies of the 90s.
I love it. Yeah.
It was one of the most popular things that Bill Clinton did his entire presidency. He worked with Republicans in Congress, but this was Bill Clinton's signature effort.
So
and now we're going to put it on Medicaid as well. It's the largest driver of costs that we have, and that's why it was such a huge debating point. There's things I'm concerned in that I see in the Senate bill that we got to work through that affect our rural hospital systems and rural health delivery. I'm confident we can get through those and find solutions. And we have no choice. We have to succeed here.
Just a couple other quick questions because I know you got a busy day. I wanted to say kudos to you for you were ahead of the curve when it came to student visas, looking into student visas. You had been pushing that for a very long time.
Yeah, last year we introduced, put out the Veto Your Visas Act after what I saw on the campuses at Columbia.
Exactly.
Those riots that took place, the anti-Semitism just out in the open.
I know.
Jewish students expressing how they feared for their lives. Our college campuses, especially those that are publicly funded, and frankly through federal student loans, they're all publicly funded.
Great point.
These cannot be laboratories for hate. They cannot be laboratories for anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, there is a normalization of that behavior from the academic elites.
Some would even argue that it's encouraging. They're encouraging. The academic elites, the administrators, the professors are actually encouraging this kind of behavior.
And young conservatives that I talk to that are in school, they concede to me that they have to keep their mouth shut.
Yeah.
And they don't express their opinions in class because they're afraid that it's going to be impacted in their grades.
That's horrible.
We need to make these colleges, again, a marketplace of ideas. Where you're not judged because of your particular opinions and feelings, that you're celebrated for having opinions and feelings, and that has not been the case. But the Veto of Your Visas Act is very similar to many of the executive orders that President Trump's already put forward and executed, and Marco Rubio is, I think, expertly locking down. If you break the laws of this country while you're here on a student visa, hit the bricks.
Yeah.
Get out of here. If you're out there protesting our country, this is a privilege.
Going against our values and everything that we stand for.
You wouldn't tolerate this from a house guest.
No.
And they're the ultimate house guests.
That's a great point.
They should not feel the right to come into our country, spew anti-Semitism, death to Israel.
Yeah.
The things that we've seen on these college campuses in the state of New York, it's unfathomable.
Yeah.
And these student visas should be canceled if they're here in spewing that kind of hate.
Just before we go, what are you seeing? I know you are keeping up on this as much as anybody can with Israel and Iran.
It's obviously no one wants to see war, but we've had war since October 7th. It's now just, frankly, between the perpetrator and the victim on October 7th was Israel. Iran funded Hamas. Iran funded Hezbollah, has funded the Houthis. They've rained hell down on Israel. Israel has fought back. I mean, here's a country the size of the state of New Jersey, surrounded by countries that don't want them to exist, and they have fought back every iota. The precision that the Israelis have taken to this fight with Iran, I think, is really remarkable. When you see how in one fell swoop they took out the entire leadership of the military, of the nuclear science arm of the Iranian government, and have just decapitated that leadership just under the Ayatollah. I think it just shows precision. They're not going after civilian population.
No.
They're going after the military targets.
And it's necessary.
And the precision that they've gone after the nuclear sites and the military holdings. And I think Iran has really been outed here as a paper tiger once again. I mean, it started last year when they launched the missiles into Israel, and one killed a Palestinian out of like 300 missiles. Iran's going to run out of missiles very soon. They don't have much of a military. They clearly never had an air force, even though they said they had an elite one.
I think a lot of
the propaganda is it's very reminiscent of Iraq.
It is,
where Baghdad Bob was out there saying that he had the U.S. on the ropes. But Iran is hanging by a thread here, and the Ayatollah and the mullahs are obviously. There's 80 million people in that country. Most of them are not radical Islamic fundamentalists. So I think it could be a new day for the people of Iran. God willing, as someone that celebrates peace and recognizes other countries' ability to exist and defend themselves. But Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Period. And we can't allow that to happen. The Israelis have taken matters into their own hands and done a brilliant job with it.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, final last question. I think I've said that 3 times. But I'm so disturbed to hear of the threats that you've been receiving at your offices, and I worry, and my thoughts are with your staff members who have to deal with this day in and day out. What are you doing, and what are you hearing on this recent spate of threats?
Well, thank you. It's unnerving. And I ran for office. Not that this should be accepted hazard of the job. After Minnesota last Saturday, I'm looking at the world very differently. We're certainly taking measures at home to make sure that my family is always safe. But then Sunday night, after Minnesota happened, my office received a very threatening message, signed. Surprisingly, that basically suggested that my staff and I should all fear for our lives.
Oh my gosh! What does that feel like?
It's sadly for me personally, it's become too normal. But for my staff, they didn't run for anything. These are people that go to work every day, work hard, and solve problems for constituents of all party affiliations. They're not out there, promoting an ideology or voting on bills. They're helping people every day. And I am going to take a zero tolerance policy. Anyone that threatens my staff or my own well-being, we are going to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. And this has to be the policy across the country. And I know after Minnesota, members of the Republican majority had a call with the Sergeant at Arms and with the Capitol Police talking about how we need this to be taken very seriously because what I have had is somewhat minor compared to what some of my colleagues have faced. But you can't threaten public officials and expect there not to be consequences. And anyone that threatens my staff and my team is going to pay the ultimate consequences, and we're going to pursue every charge at the local, state, and federal level that we can against them.
Good. Well, Nick, thanks so good. Mr. Congressman, excuse me. Thank you for giving us so much time here in the Frankly Speaking studios. Let's do it again soon.
It's great to be back with you. I look forward to the opportunity.
All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And in that studio, Assemblyman, former Congressman, Chair of the Steuben County Republicans, Joe Sempolinski. Hey, Joe.
Good morning. It's a beautiful summer morning here in Corning,
isn't it?
And
it's the first day of summer.
Well, right now you're talking like the longest days of the year, right?
Yeah.
So as I was driving from my home in Canisteo to Corning, it was all light. It was all when I come in the winter.
Yeah, it's doom and gloom.
Dark when I drive here. So I'm in a very nice seasonal mood.
Yes.
Because of that.
Well, I've got a couple comments to read because we have the Student Senior Services Fund section of our program where we read viewer comments. First up, Trump gave Iran 2 weeks to surrender. Looks like July 4th fireworks are going to be held in Iran this year.
Wow. All right.
Fair enough. Mark writes off, hats off to Nick Langworthy. I think he's doing an awesome job. Well, I'll pass it along to Nick. Thank you.
We were both with Nick last night.
Yeah.
We were both with Nick last night and had a chance to talk to him a little bit one-on-one and also in group setting. And, I think Nick's doing a good job. And you can't judge somebody unless you've walked a mile in their shoes, and so in this case, I'm uniquely qualified to
judge everybody,
to comment on the job that Mr. Langworthy is doing. Because I did a mile in his shoes prior to him being there, and I think he's doing a good job. Nick, I've known Nick for 16 years.
Yeah,
we both came up very similarly. We've both been party chairman at the county level. We've both been congressional staffers, so we have very similar backgrounds, and I would agree. I think Nick's doing a good job.
Comment from a different viewer, not a good idea to rush into war with Iran. If the main path of 18% fuel to China gets blocked, as Iran says they will do by sinking ships, it will decimate the Trump economy by leading to over $200 a barrel oil. 18% of the world's fuel production passes through the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, it's the exit to the Persian Gulf is what they were referring to, and is a global economic choke point, and there's always been concern that the Iranians somehow block it, and then not only that affects, obviously you've got the Iranian situation, but it affects the economy of the entire region, and with that being a major energy area, it affects the economy of the entire world.
And finally, this has become a fan favorite, Joe. First of all, he says good morning, but it's Climate Fact Friday with Bob. He gives us Bob gives us a climate fact every Friday.
Does he have a sponsorship? Or?
No, he's just kind enough to do it. He says, hang on, here we go again. Let's talk temperature increase. Surprise, surprise. It seems like the keyboard climate commandos got it wrong again. The 1.5 degrees Celsius warning that was going to destroy the world has been reached. No one knows or will say what has raised the temperature that started going on in the 1870s before fossil fuels became the normal part of our daily lives and has not destroyed the world. It seems our lifespan has increased, poverty and hunger worldwide has decreased. I guess they will have to again raise the bar to a higher temperature. Keep in mind those are the same people who said the world would be over with fossil fuels by 1970. I think there's a typo there.
They would be out of it.
Out of it.
Excuse me. There was concern about peak oil.
Yeah, and we should be in a new ice age in 1980. A safe weekend. Say yes to natural gas. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that.
Well, natural gas, just to piggyback on one point, there was a bill that passed late in the legislative session in Albany. It's one of these things where you could sort of claim a win even during a loss because there was concerns about a much broader bill passing, and only one section of it was able to get through. But it was something that I definitely voted against. Mr. Palmisano is our ranker on energy and led the debate
energy
on
guy.
it. He's our top guy on that. And what it does is it gets rid of the 100-foot rule. And so if you're building a house and you are within 100 feet of a natural gas main, the utility is obligated under the previous law for a long-standing time to hook you up for free. And the idea is if you're right there on the grid already, they should hook you up. And the same thing applies for electricity. And what the state is going to do is get rid of that just for gas. And the idea is they're trying to choke off the growth of the natural gas infrastructure, so it sort of withers on the vine. Right. And the argument during the debate was that the left was saying, well, if you want gas, you can still have it. You just have to pay for the hookup. Yeah. And these are the same people that want to give everything else free. And actually, Mary Beth Walsh is the floor leader for the Republicans in the Assembly, and she just on top of her head wrote down all the things she had heard that session that they wanted to give out for free, and just
Great idea.
Said, oh, you want all this to be covered by the state, but now all of a sudden you want people to pay for their own natural gas hookup. So
it wasn't cheap either.
No, it would be thousands of dollars potentially, and very substantial costs. And the governor says we have a housing crisis, we have a housing affordability crisis, and of course that would just be passed on to whomsoever purchases the house.
Right.
You know, it's a lot of the crises of affordability and pricing that come on that affect New Yorkers come from bad policy, and if you just undid those policies, lo and behold,
right,
prices would go down.
I know. We are going to talk about end of session, some of the stuff that you dealt with in Albany, but what do you think, because this has been a hot topic on the program, and they all kind of tie in together. There was a great piece about 2 weeks ago about the normalization of kind of left-wing violence and these threats. I mean, we heard from Congressman Langworthy right before he got on here about the threats that his office has received. How has this become normalized?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say definitively, this I've said this many times publicly and on social media and what have you. I am categorically against political violence. I don't care if it's somebody that agrees with me or disagrees with me, or somebody that's indifferent to my positions that's perpetuating it. It's completely and totally unacceptable in a free society. Mm-hmm. We have elections. Elections determine who our public officials are, and then they do their jobs. And I have vehement disagreements with people. That doesn't mean we get violent. We determine our future with ballots, not bullets, not knives. Exactly. In America, and it is. I saw on social media last night apparently Max Miller getting run off the road.
We talked about that this morning quickly.
I've met Mr. Miller. He was I think he may have been coming in as a freshman when I was leaving or something. But I have met Congressman Miller, and seems like a real nice fella. The interaction I had with him, and I'm glad that he is safe. Obviously, closer to home, we had the situation with Lee Zeldin when he was running, and so we have got to get away from the idea that violence is the way that we deal with a political situation. It's utterly and completely unacceptable.
Yeah, and I think some of the rhetoric that the media pushes, and from some of the elected leaders, is not helping this matter.
Yeah, I mean, people, they get spun up that whatever the issue of the day is somehow, an existential crisis. Yeah. And I'm not saying that any particular issue is not important, but you need to sort of take a step back and say, all right, the sun's going to come up tomorrow, and just because something doesn't go your way, or a public official takes a stand that you disagree with, we have to realize everybody's a human being, a person, and I have to deal with people every day that I think are misguided. I think in some cases dangerously misguided. But that doesn't give me an excuse to engage in violence against them. That's an excuse for me to argue my position and say, this is why you're wrong. This is why you're hurting our society with your policies. This is why you should change those policies. This is why maybe I'm going to vote for the other person or campaign for the other person or something like that. But we have to lower the temperature. We're talking right now under the administration of a president who during his campaign took a bullet to the head.
Yes.
And if it had been the slightest bit off,
he didn't move his head just perfectly.
You're dealing with a murder on live television. And so we've got a real problem in this country as far as violence is concerned. Thank God Donald Trump did look at that chart when he did. That was borderline miraculous. And that we were talking about a nicked ear as opposed to a shot that hit home. So we've danced very close to very dangerous waters as far as this is concerned for our society, and we got to stop. Yeah,
and I would say, I see the protests. I'm not suggesting protesters are to that level. I'm not, but I'm saying we see so much kind of outrage right now, and yet you and I will later on talk about the primaries. We'll talk about the local general elections, and what will the turnout be for those? A couple hundred people. They'll be very low. People aren't running. I mean, it is remarkable how many people are running in the primaries.
I'm happy to have people running, but when I advise candidates, and the way I handle things as party chairman is if we got a primary. If any of those candidates want to call me for advice, I'll give them the best advice I can give them. I refer to it as sort of being positively neutral. I'm neutral, but that doesn't mean if you call me and say, "Hey, do you think I should do A, B, or C?" I'll give you my best answer. Behind the scenes a little bit. And as I've advised candidates who have called me. I've pointed out that in a off-year primary for a local office, you're talking a pretty low turnout. Now, this was in the context of concentrating where you're going to knock on doors or who you're going to mail to or those sort of things. But the numbers, when you look them up, are pretty starkly low for some of these races. And that's a sad thing. I spend a lot of my time trying to engage the youth. I go talk to schools. I did, as you know, when I was in Congress, I served on the Education and Labor Committee. We went to a lot of schools. I've tried to do the same thing, engaging students. We're doing a summer reading program.
Yeah, we've been promoting it. We want to
and
start one for Frankly Speaking.
There you go. That's right. A summer watch TV program.
Yes, yeah.
Turn on Big Fox in the morning.
For 15 minutes a day.
Right, yeah.
And I'll send you a certificate.
That's right, yeah. Don't watch those other stations.
No, exactly.
And so, part of that is I think it's just a good thing to do, but there's also, there's going to need to be a next generation of leaders.
Yes.
And I'm 42. 42. Sadly, I'm still young for politics.
Oh, absolutely.
And
not as young as Vance.
No.
Vance beat us both.
JD Vance.
That's the first one.
Is younger. Is younger than I am. What are you going to do? Elise Stefanik's younger than I am. Mike Lawler's younger than I. So all the folks that are looking at running for governor, I'm like, how am I now an elder statesman in that process? I don't know what happened.
It goes quick.
I've known Mike and Elise for a long time, and they're both very nice people, but they're younger than me, which is not good. No. But we got to have that next year coming up, and realize that public service is a noble thing.
Yes.
And obviously, the politics gets a bad rap, but we need to have people of talent saying that's someplace I want to go, as opposed to I'm going to go do something else. And there's nothing wrong with doing something else, but when you don't have the best and the brightest going into public service, you get things that you don't want. You get people that are there for nefarious reasons, self-serving reasons, narcissistic reasons, and that is bad for everybody in our society.
We got to take a short break, but let's go to a couple comments before we do that. Good morning, Frank. Nice to hear from Congressman Langworthy. And good morning, Joe Sempolinski. Happy Friday, y'all. Comment from a different viewer.
Right back. I like the y'all. That's fantastic.
I know. This is how Climate Change Bob works. I would like to know what Climate Change Bob thinks about the large number of volcanoes currently active around the world. How will that affect the weather? So you got bypassed. Not a question for you.
Okay.
Climate change.
I remember when I was a little boy, they had one of the volcanoes went off, and we had a cold summer. And it was the summer I had swimming lessons at Craig Park Pool.
Of course.
Craig Park Pool in Painted Post is where I had my swimming lessons, and it was cold. It was Krakatoa, I think, was the volcano that went off.
Yeah.
And it was like 60 degrees all summer, and my mom made me take outdoor swimming lessons in an unheated pool. Thanks, Mom.
It made you tough.
Yeah,
It made you ready for Washington and Albany.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And finally, belated Happy Father's Day to one of my Friday favorites, Joe Sempolinski. Your girls are beautiful, all three of them.
Oh,
you saw the picture.
The third one must be my wife.
Yeah.
About. Yeah. I got two daughters and a wife that end up in photos, and you can post a photo of me, nobody cares. Post a photo of my kids.
Yeah.
Everybody likes it.
Did they recommend you just keep yourself out of the pictures?
I mean, I think just as a general rule, it would be smart politics. Yeah.
All right, we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And in that studio, Joe Sempolinski, current assemblyman, former congressman. Comment from a viewer during the Student Senior Services Fund section of our program. Joe Sempolinski has 40-plus years to serve, so don't rule out president.
I hope I have 40-plus years, period.
Let alone to serve.
42. I'm hoping for another good 42.
Yeah.
That would be great. I will not be a candidate for president of the United States in the upcoming election.
Don't they? I like that you said in the upcoming election. Okay, mark your calendars.
My plan is to run for re-election to my career.
Okay, perfect. So going into you got the LA riots, you got the No Kings protest. There's a lot of protests going on, Joe.
A lot of protests,
a lot of rioting
all over the place, and to be just perfectly clear on my position, I am for free speech. If you want to stand on a sidewalk and wave a sign about anything under the sun, left, right, or center, go for it. What is unacceptable, and I do put in sort of that category of sort of getting into political violence, is when you use that as an excuse for looting, you use that as an excuse for property destruction.
Right.
you use that as an excuse to disrupt roads. Where you have these people sitting in the road or blocking the street. That's unacceptable because that is a public safety issue. Imagine if an ambulance got to get through there, or a police officer's got to get through there. You can't have that.
No.
So if you want to not disrupt someone else's life and express your opinion in a vocal way, God bless you. But you cannot endanger the safety and well-being and property of others and then characterize it as a mostly peaceful.
The media becomes so cliche with things like that because even when they become a joke, they still use it.
That's right. And they've been using it a lot lately. The mostly peaceful, which during 2020 became sort of
because
the
you had
of
people,
the reporter and everything's on fire. It's like it's like the original
meme
Naked Gun movie
right.
where Leslie Nielsen's in front of the fireworks store that is blowing up and he's like, nothing to see here.
Exactly.
There's a little bit of that going on, and don't believe your lying eyes sort of thing. And listen, I've been protested.
Of course.
I get it. And when I've had that situation, when I worked for my predecessor in Congress or whatever, I'll go talk to them and listen to their opinion and what have you. I think everybody knows what they see it, the difference between a legitimate protest, which is fine,
100%.
and a illegitimate riot or something else, and we're getting more and more of the latter, which is frustrating.
It's very, very troubling. I did want to talk about Iran. That's obviously the big topic yesterday. Trump announcing within, like that viewer said, about 2 weeks, he's going to make that decision. Where do you see us right now? Where do you think Trump's mind is at in this?
Well, I mean, Trump's like a master negotiator.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy, he literally wrote the book on negotiation. So it's like when I see him engaging in a high-level negotiation, it's like I see like Wayne Gretzky lacing up to play hockey.
Right.
Like, I'm going to give him a little slack as far as Wayne probably knows what he's doing. Right?
He doesn't need my help.
I would think Donald Trump in the arena of negotiating knows what he's doing, and he's very successful, especially for a guy who literally wrote his game plan for how he negotiates into a book, and then made millions of dollars off the book that anybody can read, and then he just executes that game plan every time. So I do not want there to be death and destruction, period.
Right.
I certainly don't want American soldiers engaged in a war in the Middle East. We've had plenty of that over the last several decades. I do acknowledge that Israel certainly has a right to defend itself, and Israel is concerned about what would be for them an existential situation, literally an existential situation, if Iran had a nuclear weapon. They're a very physically small country, so it doesn't take very many nuclear weapons to kill everyone there. So Israel's got to do what Israel's got to do. That's a separate question from American engagement.
Exactly.
So far it seems like Israel knows what they're doing. And I wouldn't buy a beeper. Or
of all things, right? A
beeper. I mean, the precision with which they have sort of dismantled what was thought to be a fairly sophisticated national security apparatus in Iran. Is very impressive.
Yeah, we got to fly.
We got to fly.
It's the I don't know if they can see. Yeah, I know.
Land on my head. So they seem to be able to handle their own business, so to speak, in a good way. So where I hope this ends up is Israel's safe. America doesn't have to engage directly, and Iran does not have the capability to produce a nuclear weapon. That's the ideal scenario. I'm sure that is where the president's head is at as well. Yeah. But we've got to give him the ability to negotiate to get there, and that's something I believe is well within the capabilities of Donald J. Trump to handle.
I was going to try to swap.
You're going to swap the fly?
Not on live TV.
Yeah. So all the folks at TV Land, there's a fly. You can't see it. If you're in HD, you can see the fly. Right?
Was it Obama that got kind of in trouble for killing a fly like live on something?
Oh, I think he swatted one on a podium. The one I remember is Mike Pence getting it landing on his head, sitting there for 10 minutes.
For what seemed like forever. Yeah. All right, we got to take a short break. Get your questions for Joe Sempolinski. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And in that studio, Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski. There we go, up on the screen. Oh, I got to ask you about this, Joe. And we're going to get to end of session. We're going to talk about local races. Any questions people have, they can feel free to send in. All right, I don't know if you're a betting man, but Cuomo's mayor, right?
Well, oh boy. And my position on Andrew Cuomo in general has been articulated repeatedly on this fine program and its predecessor on radio.
Yes, that's right.
Frank, you and I were negative on Cuomo's handling of COVID, to your credit, much earlier. You never drank the Cuomo Kool-Aid, and the idea that he might become mayor of the largest city in America is distressing to me. However, Assemblyman Mamdani is a radical.
There was, I almost want to say it was even the Daily News that put it out, but I think I'm wrong about that. But it's not that Cuomo was strong; it's that all the other candidates are so
That's
weak.
Exactly correct. I think it's the assessment association. But just where I'm going with this is just because you're the Democratic nominee, which is what we're going to decide here very shortly, does not make you mayor of New York City.
Right.
The incumbent mayor is running as an independent.
Right.
Cuomo, if he loses the primary, has an independent line as well.
Yep.
There's a lot of talk about Zoran getting the working families line if he loses to Cuomo, because they don't want to give Cuomo the working families line. Right. And Curtis Sliwa is the Republican nominee.
Right.
So we're looking at what could very, very easily, in fact, probably more likely than not, a four-way general election. And when you have that four-way split, then three of whom are registered Democrats, it becomes very unpredictable. Maybe Adams slips in for another term because you've got, Andrew Cuomo being a sociopath, and you've got, frankly, somebody that's right on the edge of being a communist, if he's not actually a communist.
Right.
Does Adams slip in there? Does Curtis Sliwa?
Yeah, that
suddenly
really
you have a three-way. I had the chance to meet Mr. Sliwa up in Albany. He was at the state Republican women's dinner.
Okay.
And I happened to be sort of one table over for him. I got a chance to shake his hand, and all I said the entire conversation was I shook Mr. Sliwa's hand. And I said, I pray to God that you win.
Yeah.
Because all the other options are so unacceptable.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, New York City is New York City, but if you have that sort of four-way unpredictability and splits, can he win a race with like 35% of the vote or something? I don't know. I think it's coming down to the two main candidates for the Democratic nomination. That's why you saw the city controller have his sort of stunt with ICE, because he's sort of the third one. He's the odd man out. He's trying to, get into that conversation.
Even when the headlines was it's his Lander's time to shine or something like that. It's like, this political theater, Joe.
But again, whichever one of those two wins the primary, the other has a path to being on the ballot in November, and will have enormous political pressure to take that path. So imagine if Zoran Mamdani wins the Democratic nomination. You don't think that there's going to be Bloomberg, all these people begging Cuomo to stay on the ballot in general?
Yeah.
He will.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's I haven't talked to Andrew Cuomo, but that's my thing. And if Cuomo wins, you don't think there's going to be enormous pressure from the far left radical base saying, no, you got to take the working families line. You got to do it. So I think we're looking at a four-way race, and then who knows what happens in November.
This is completely off topic, but I thought you'd find it interesting. You had mentioned about drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
You know where that statement comes from, of course, Jonestown.
Yes.
I interviewed a survivor of Jonestown.
Oh, did you really?
On the radio, Charles Krause, and he was the reporter with the Washington Post.
Yeah. Okay.
And it wasn't Kool-Aid. It
was
Flavoring.
Like an off-brand.
Yeah, it was Flavoring.
Yeah, it was an off-brand drink.
See what you learn on Frankly Speaking?
Don't join cults out there.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, I wasted precious airtime on that. But we're talking about Cuomo, but also Democrat Party, where you have this far left, like in the mayoral race, and the AOCs of the world. Then I read, it was of all places, the New York Times saying the Democrat Party is in chaos.
Yeah.
It's broke. The media is still trying to present that they've got the power midterms are all but over.
Yes. Yeah. I read their sort of unendorsement sort of thing where it was really bizarre how they did it, because traditionally they would say, we endorse John Doe for this office, and they had guest editorialists come in and say, this is who I like, but it wasn't from the paper itself. And then their editorial was basically bashing the two major candidates.
Yeah.
They bashed Mondami a little bit more than Cuomo, but they certainly bashed Cuomo. And they sort of, said, we like, Lander a little bit, and we like this other candidate who I never heard of a little bit, but also there was sort of this sort of bashing of where the Democratic Party was, which was very interesting. So I think there's a couple things. I think one, there are people that are seeing that the Democrats have reached just this wacky point where your average citizen doesn't have to be terribly conservative, could even be a moderate Democrat going,
no,
this isn't really what I signed up for. No. And they sort of spun off into crazy land. But then also I think there was a little bit of, we don't want to totally give up that we're the New York Times and we decide what you should think.
But that's
and they
a tough line.
Let it go.
That's a tough line, though, because they've gotten a lot of pushback in the past when they've even strayed from the left narrative. They had their subscriptions, plummet. Yeah. So, but to have that come out there, and then the New York Post, which you expected from them, but they have a piece today where insiders in the Democrat Party saying it's chaos. Chaos is used way too much in articles, but it's chaos that the Democrat Party just can't get their footing. They don't know what to believe anymore.
I agree with that assessment.
Yeah, right. I mean,
they seem to be discombobulated, and they have a lot of different factionalism. I think sometimes it's a little behind the scenes, but it's definitely there. And they are in disarray. They did everything they could, legitimate and in some cases very illegitimate.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about some of the lawfare stuff, to prevent Donald Trump from regaining the White House. The lawfare, the electoral politics, the switcheroo with Biden and Harris, billions of dollars of spending, paying celebrities to do concerts, none of it worked.
Yeah.
It didn't work at all.
No.
And it didn't even come close really to working. And so their entire game plan is based on a cultural and political environment that doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
And suddenly, it's cool to be a Republican. It's not cool to be a Democrat. And they're like the aging hippie that used to be cool,
right?
And they just don't know how to fix it because everything they've done doesn't work anymore.
I used to say this on the radio, so this goes back a long time. I always said that if you want to be rock and roll and if you want to be rebellious, you want to be punk rock, you have to be a conservative.
Yeah,
because look at Bruce Springsteen, always preaching as he's charging you $300 a ticket about the billionaires and all that, lecturing you, and that's not rock and roll anymore. That's just cliche.
If you have the mainstream media and corporate America and all the celebrities, academia on your side, how are you the outsider rebelling against the machine? You are the machine.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, a couple comments before we go to break. This is a weird one. I have not heard anybody ask this. Joe, what's your take on Elise Stefanik joining the mayor's race? I thought they were going to say gubernatorial, but they corrected it. New York City mayor race. Too late for that, right? Oh, sorry. You want me to take a break?
No, I'm good. Well, Elise lives in the North Country.
That's what I wondered.
There was talk about, if she had been named UN ambassador, that would have put her in physically in New York City because that's where the UN ambassador is. Headquartered. It's the only cabinet position that's based in New York City rather than based in Washington, D.C. So that may be where they're coming from. But she's the congresswoman from the North Country, and is not a resident of the city of New York. And I think the main question and speculation is who is going to get in the race for governor on the Republican side. And Elise did come to Albany beginning of last week, and I was... we had a press conference. We had a meeting before that with all the Republicans in the Assembly and the Senate, and she did not say one way or another what she was going to do for governor, but she did a very good job sort of critiquing the current governor, which is world class at.
And then that hearing in Congress. She is made for that. Yeah,
we were in the depths of the end of session. So session's running until like 10 p.m. in Albany. So the last couple weeks, you're in session like all day.
Right.
It's long days. So the way we, 6 or 7 of us Republican Assemblymen, the way we unwound at the end of the day, like 11 o'clock that night. So we were sitting in an office, cracked a beverage, pulled up on YouTube, Nick and Elise and Mike
doing great,
going after the governor. We just sat there and watched it, and that was our entertainment for the evening, was watching those hearings.
And I was excited about it because, number one, you have one of the best that can do it, which is Elise Stefanik, and then you have Hochul, who's never really good off the cuff.
No.
I mean, and that's an easy question from a reporter, let alone when you have Elise Stefanik, Nick Langworthy, and Lawler going after you.
Yeah, there's levels to this, and the folks that are questioning her, as far as ability to handle questioning and what have you, the governor's not on their level. Yeah. Nick or Elise or Mike, they all did very well.
Not even close. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. In that studio, Joe Sempolinski, and this is the Steuben County Office for the Aging section of our program, committed to maximizing quality of life, safety, and independence. Let's go to some viewer comments. Oh, Climate Bob is back again.
Climate Bob's back. Right.
Great question about volcano eruptions. I remember the Mount St. Helens eruption. It did have a cooling effect that summer. The word was that acid rain was going to kill all the fish in the lakes. It did not happen. Now the climate change warriors are jumping at the chance to spread the narrative that CO2 levels are higher than they have ever been. This is simply a lie. According to Ice Core records, CO2 has been much higher in the past. Also, if they're measuring CO2 levels near a volcano erupting, the levels of CO2 will be very high. They just can't let the CO2 false narrative go. There we go.
Have you ever seen the before and after pictures of Mount St. Helens?
Yeah.
Like it's stark.
Yeah.
It was like, the whole mountain blew up.
Yeah, pretty wild. I just want to talk about this real quick, Joe, but I think it's worth mentioning, and we didn't talk about it last time. What do you think about Jake Tapper's book? The problem I have is I don't think we talked about this. Sorry if we did to the viewers. I hate the media trying to rewrite history and cover it for themselves.
Right.
And I think
that's my problem with it.
I think Jake Tapper thought he was going to get away with it, but he really hasn't. He's gotten a lot of pushback on
as he should.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's like the meme with the guy in the hot dog suit. Where it's like, we're all trying to find the guy who did this from the one comedy show. And that's how I react to it is, come on. Yeah. You have enough material this quickly to write a book about it.
Yeah.
And you didn't push back at all.
Yeah.
While this was going on.
Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah.
Like, we're less than a year out.
Yeah.
From Trump's only been president 6 months.
Yeah.
I remember it was a few weeks ago where we passed the 1 year anniversary of Biden going, and I'll debate you anytime, anywhere.
So awkward.
So this all unraveled approximately 1 year ago. And now all of a sudden we have enough information to sort of say, well, we have all the detail of who was covering it up, and
everybody can turn on him now that he's not useful. Meaning Biden.
This is because they weren't being journalists when Biden was president. They were covering for him because of TDS or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But I find it offensive.
I do too.
That Jake Tapper is now monetizing his own incompetence.
Yeah, and CNN turned into an infomercial for his book. Not that I watched CNN that much. I think we did talk about this, so I'll move along. But to me, it's still relevant because I know the media hasn't learned their lesson.
That's right. This proves that they haven't learned
exactly.
their lesson.
And Joe Scarborough said, well, I personally never saw him be that way. You saw the videos we saw.
Right.
You can't. It's not just you have to be in the same room.
Nobody talking to me. Well, you're a journalist. Go ask some questions.
Yeah.
Do some investigation.
Yeah, we definitely did talk about this. Yeah. So how was the end of session? Fun?
It is interesting going through my first session. So for the folks out there, the way the calendar sort of works in Albany is session is very densely packed the first half of the calendar year, even more so than a congressional session schedule. You have the budget that in theory is supposed to be done March 31st. It was not. It was not. And then the second half of the session, April, May, June, is supposed to be more substantive policy. Now, like anything in government, when you come up against a deadline, things get pushed off. Yeah. So the last 2 weeks of session you're in session. Normally, let's say it's a random day in February, I'll have meetings with people that want to talk about something that's in the budget. Yeah. Maybe there'll be a hearing or something or a press event. And then you're in session for 2-3 hours the afternoon. You're doing stuff. This is 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours where you're in session going through bill after bill after bill after bill. So it's particularly intense. And then the legislature is sort of out of session for the summer. And then in the fall, there is rumors about there being a special session for different purposes that would have to be called by the governor.
Does that happen very often?
It happens sometimes.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's been a while since
But it's got to be something particular. Yeah. But then also there'll be committee hearings in the fall. Each committee is obligated to have at least one hearing after the budget is done, as sort of serving its oversight capacity. And they use those as also prep for policies for next year.
Right.
So I certainly will have to be in Albany. I guess I'm on 6 committees, so in theory I should be there at least 6 times or whatever. But it's certainly dramatically less intense than the first half of the year. There is a little bit of an off-season, on-season in Albany compared to sort of you're at a, you run it like a 9-10 for half the year, and then you run it at a 3 or a 4, as opposed to running it at a 7.5 the whole time like you do for Congress.
Gotcha.
And so now when you have that sort of environment where you're going through bill after bill after bill, 2 different sort of things can happen. One, you can have something that you thought was going to get passed, but there's just not enough time. And the Republicans, though in the minority, our power increases the closer we get to the end of session, because when a bill comes out of committee, the first procedural question is this bill laid aside or consented? And that's determined by the minority party.
Oh, okay.
And so the bill comes up, and our floor leader, Mary Beth Walsh, is able to say lay aside or not. And if it's not laid aside, vote's immediate.
Okay.
No debate. You get a couple minutes to explain your vote, but no debate. You just vote. And so those are things that are going to pass 150 to 0 or 140 to 10 or whatever. You can certainly vote no if you want. And I sometimes do. But these are things that have a broad consensus. If it's laid aside, then the majority, once you finish that block of votes, they could bring it up immediately. So the lay aside provision can't block something that's like an A++ priority for the Dems.
Sure.
But you can gum up the works on a lot of B or C or D priorities because there's just not enough time to get back to it. So you get to the end of session, you'll have Democrats coming to Republicans saying, "Oh, please don't lay aside my bill because it's really not that bad. You should go for it or whatever." And you see a little bit of that happening. So the leverage increases, but those last few days of session are tense. Again, sometimes things that you thought were going to happen don't. The other side to it is, in the midst of all that, suddenly something comes up in the middle of the night, and we're voting on something very consequential that you didn't know it had existed more than 24 hours before, or what have you. So it can work in a variety of different ways, having that much legislation happening over that compressed a time frame. And
at the end of the day, it still gets to Hochul's desk, right? And there's some questions over some of the things she's going to sign.
Yes, and the way that works is she has a very fixed calendar on how she can sign it once it's delivered to her.
Okay.
But she determines, just because it's passed both houses does not mean it's delivered to her.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, there's an extra thing. So effectively, she has till the end of the calendar year to decide. So what she'll do is she will request to the legislature, send me these 50 bills, deliver them to me today, and that's what I'll work on this week.
Gotcha.
And then you send me the next block of bills later. So just because something's passed and it hasn't been signed into law in a week or two does not mean that it's been delivered to the governor. You can go look on the state website and see if it's been delivered to the governor. She has much more time than you would think she does, as it's sort of plainly written. In fact, she really has effectively until the end of the calendar year to decide whether to veto or sign a particular piece of legislation.
We got to take a short break, but one comment from a viewer before we go. The arrogance of Jake Tapper is astounding to me and such an insult. I'm a small speck of insignificance in Corning. That's not true, and I have known for years and would remark often to my family, why aren't they revealing what we should see for ourselves? I'm glad he's getting pushback and should. Most Democrats, I think that was a typo on purpose.
Yeah, it could be.
Are trying to use this ridiculous excuse. It should only help our cause. Thank you very much. All right, let's take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. In that studio, Joe Sempolinski. So, from a political standpoint, when you first saw the potential cap of 700 cows, from a purely political standpoint, not that you're
it's sort of like it's a low-hanging curveball. Yeah.
And you're like, wait, who proposed this? Where are they from? I mean, from a political standpoint, it's like
Ms.
this
Rosenthal was in the assembly. She's from Manhattan.
Yeah, we had a Brooklyn.
Oh boy, yeah, the Senate sponsor was Brooklyn. I thought it was not. I thought it must have been a mistake.
Yeah,
because it was presented to me as they're going to ban farms more than 700 cows, which is, by the way, that is what the proposal is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that can't be right.
Yeah.
That can't be that silly.
Yeah.
And actually, we recorded a video of, and I'm like, I've got to be, I thought I had to be missing something.
Right.
That I must be misreading it.
Yeah.
And so I sort of hesitated, hedged a little bit, and said, they don't understand agriculture or whatever. And then I reviewed it in detail. I got some commentary on it. I'm like, no, they're going to ban farms more than 700 cows straight up. And I remember I called my communications guy in Albany, and I said, let's just scrap what we just shot. I want to shoot a new one.
Yeah.
And obviously it was much more aggressive.
Yeah.
Because it was just, sometimes you just can't believe how goofy something is, and that is what it is. To have people in Manhattan, I don't know how many cows there are in Manhattan, but there's certainly more in Steuben County, if there are any cows in Manhattan, saying some arbitrary number of 700. And they also had a cap on veal calves and a cap on certain size pigs as well. That didn't get as much attention, but same thing. And the way it would work is, if you're above that number now, you can never grow. You're locked in.
Right.
And then you can never cross that 700 threshold.
Yeah, you can't get the permit, right?
Right, yeah, because there's a different permitting. And don't we want businesses to grow?
Yeah.
Like if you're running a farm and you got 650 cows and you're doing great and you're providing product to people. By the way, I drink milk.
Yeah.
I think probably all these folks in Manhattan probably drink milk
but they
too.
get it at a bodega. They don't know where.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. It just shows up on the shelf.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't we want you to be able to get that 701st cow?
Yeah.
Like, don't we want you to be able to grow?
Maybe encourage you to do
maybe
that?
hire somebody else or sell more product or have milk be cheaper because there's more of it?
Yeah.
In the assembly district I represent, we have a new massive facility for Great Lakes cheese. It's the largest agriculture facility in the history of the state of New York. They need a massive amount of milk to go in one end of that facility so cheese can come out the other every single day. And where do you get a massive amount of milk?
Yes.
You get it from a massive amount of cows.
Yeah.
And if we're hiring hundreds upon hundreds of people to make cheese in Franklinville, New York, Farmersville, New York, the facility's so big, it's in two towns. It literally straddles the town line. Hiring hundreds of people, don't we want the infrastructure supporting that facility to be robust? Because now if we're hiring hundreds of people to make cheese, well, maybe we're going to have to hire hundreds of people to take care of the cows.
Exactly.
We're going to have to. It just, I have never seen anything more goofy. Now, your question was the political side of it. And so we pushed back quite aggressively.
Quickly, too. You were
several other assemblymen did the same thing. And I will give credit to the media, which I don't do a lot of.
No, me either.
I was on Mr. Lonsbury's show talking about it. I got a call from one of the network affiliates in Buffalo.
Oh, great.
Saying, do you want to talk about this? And I figured that was this is not going to be good. It was a very good story.
Oh.
They interviewed me, and they interviewed a dairy farmer, and it was really a pushback on this. And that's coming from a network affiliate. So there was a lot of coverage of it, and it was coverage showing just how goofy the proposal was. So I was very happy with how the mainstream media handled an Albany issue, and that is how you stop bad policy. You make it show the world
how bad
just
it is.
how ridiculous it is.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they don't have the ability to get the votes they need in the Assembly or Senate to pass it.
We had a blast on the show because we came up with bureaucratic names for cow counters, the people that would have to go around. I wish I had them say, people were so brilliant out there sending me these ideas. Well, you would be, because that would be a pretty cushy job.
Yeah.
If you can count this 700.
Oh, there's the 701st cow.
Get it out.
You got to go.
All right, last question. This is tough before we go to break, our final break. Can New York State be saved? Serious question.
That is an excellent and serious question, and I think next year's gubernatorial race will be the answer to that question. We must have a Republican governor elected next year.
There we go. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back. And wrapping up today's edition, get your last minute questions in for Joe Sempolinski. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are wrapping up today's edition of Frankly Speaking. What a show. Joe, we have to talk about primaries, so people have to remember because, listen, in Corning Payne and Post area, we ask people to vote 3 times in a month, essentially.
Yes.
2 for school budget, and now this on Tuesday.
Yes, so this will be on Tuesday the 24th. And their early voting is already open.
Yeah.
So you can early voting. The only site for early voting in the county this year is in Bath. Mm-hmm. So anybody from anywhere in Steuben County, if they're voting early, can vote in Bath. If you're not going to vote early, it's the usual Tuesday in June, Tuesday the 24th. and also there are no primaries in the city of Corning.
Right.
There's no primaries in the city of Hornell. The highest, there's some town primaries scattered around, but there's 3 county legislative primaries, which are sort of the higher echelon primaries. We have one in Canisteo, Cameron, and Thurston, that county legislative district. We have one in the town of Irwin. There's a 3-way primary for the legislature there. I think most of these candidates have been on your show.
They all have, yep.
And then we have one in Hornby, town of Corning, again, not the city, the town, and Caton, that district. So there's a north-south district, Irwin district, and then an east-west district through the central part of the county. Those are the 3 county legislative positions where there's primaries. 2 of them are 2-way primaries, and one of them is a 3-way primary. So I greatly encourage, as we talked about earlier on the show, turnout for these type of elections is shockingly low. So it is very important that you get out and support the candidate of your choice in these primaries to make sure we have the best candidate.
I believe your vote always matters, but it may matter a little bit more.
Exactly, just percentage-wise, it does matter a little bit more. And also, in 2 of those 3 districts, the ones in the Corning area, the Corning suburb ones, there is a Democrat in the general election.
Yeah, that's right.
And so we want to really make sure we have the best, most qualified, most competitive candidate going into the general election to hold those 2 seats in the legislature. We don't have a situation where we have a weaker candidate and the Democrats can take advantage of that. So especially in those 2 districts where there is a partisan general election, we really need to make sure that people get out and vote and pick the best candidate.
Yep, and again, the vote is on Tuesday. We've tried to do the best because there's not a lot of places to go to find out about the candidate.
Yeah, right,
So
especially with a smaller office.
Yeah, so we've been very lucky to have most, if not all, of the people running in the various primaries. Final question, Joe, just before we go. I know you alluded to it earlier. I'm going to put up on the screen. How's the summer reading challenge going? People signing up?
Yeah, it's exciting. This is sort of one of the fun sides of being an assembly member, and we've done things to engage the school. We did a teacher program where schools could pick the teacher of the year, and when we gave them an award, and that was positive. As a member of the education committee, as somebody who's married to a teacher, somebody who has young kids who are in the process of learning to read, anything I can do to encourage people to take advantage of the educational opportunities that are presented to them, and especially over the summer, we have sort of learning loss over the summer. So if we can be a little bit of when the kid comes back for the next grade, that they've been keeping that mind active and engaged. Please do it. You can go to my social media and sign up, and it's open to all kids, and we want to encourage folks to read during the summer.
So what I'd also say, just so the kids are up to date when they return to school, make them watch Frankly Speaking.
Listen, I have run into parents. This is the truth. I've been out and about running to parents with their kids and said, me and my daughter or whatever, we watch Frankly Speaking, and they don't know me as Assemblyman or Congressman. They know me as that guy that goes on Frankly Speaking. So you're serving the community.
All right, pat on the back. See how I do that to end the show?
That's it. Right.
I see if you'll say something nice. No, that's not true. But I think it's great. The book club. You're like when we grew up. Book It. Remember?
Book It. Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
Shout out to what Pizza Hut did with Book It. That was. Listen,
well, made lifelong Pizza Hut fans.
When I was in Albany, we finished session early one day. I went to Pizza Hut and I got a personal pan pizza, and I took a picture and sent it to like my buddies. Like, I used to have to read a book for this. Now I can just eat it.
Now I'm a grown up.
I don't have to read.
I don't even have to read. Well, Joe, thanks for giving us so much time. We'll do this again soon, and I'm sure we'll talk maybe after the primaries. Sound good?
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll be back Monday morning with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. I look forward to it already.